Well, wow, it's great to be in Tyler. It's hard to believe I've been on the road since April the 8th, and we're right before early voting, and I'm in Tyler, which I can't imagine a better place to be the night before early voting starts. And I've talked to a lot of people, thousands of people, and sometimes people say, well, you've got my vote. I vote straight Republican. And then you know you're in trouble. They're not showing up to vote. But I know you all understand the difference, and making a difference in Texas means you vote during early vote. So a lot of people have asked me why I didn't run for Attorney General for a fourth term. And part of it is based on a calling that I felt each time I ran. I felt like there was something that I was supposed to do, a mission that I had. In the first term, I think you guys might remember this guy. What was his name? Oh, Barack Obama, that guy. I felt like we were fast losing our constitutional republic. He lost Congress badly after his first 2 years. And if you'll remember, he decided, unlike any other president in U.S. history, he decided he wasn't going to work with Congress, that he was going to just start doing his own thing. Executive orders, using agencies to change regulations, instead of going through the lawful practice, the constitutional practice of actually letting Congress pass legislation, he decided he was going to do it another way. And so I knew Texas had to be at that forefront. And the people that were running at the time, I did not think would do that. And so I ran, of course, won. And within 2 years, my 2 years that I overlapped with Barack Obama, we sued him 27 times and won about 80% of those cases. And I think we made a huge difference pushing back on the federal government, saying, no, you're not going to do this. You're not going to change this Constitution that we care about. We are going to fight you. We're from Texas. Yeah. And then my second term, I was motivated by taking on big tech, companies like Google and Facebook that I felt like were impacting our lives in maybe not such good ways, including elections. And I also felt like I had to take on some of the big pharma companies. We sued Pfizer over the vaccine, if you'll remember the whole COVID crisis, and them pitching a vaccine that wasn't tested, and that they were lying to us about being effective, and it wasn't. And so we took on several big tech companies and several big pharma companies. And I also was really motivated by the whole election integrity issue. And if you'll remember, we had a little election with Joe Biden and our current president, Donald Trump, where it looked like the night of the election that Donald Trump was going to win. And I actually had a conversation with him early on, and I was telling him I was really worried about voter fraud, mail-in ballot fraud. I was worried about it in Texas. I was involved in 12 lawsuits with different liberal counties. I'm not talking about Smith County. I'm talking about Travis County. I'm talking about Dallas County. I'm talking about Harris County. They wanted to mail out ballots that were not to everyone. Well, that's not what Texas law said. Texas law required that you satisfy certain requirements. One, be over 65, or you could be, say you were out of the county, or you could be disabled, or you could be in prison but not a felon. Those are our laws. And all these judges and all these liberal counties are going, don't worry about Texas law. Don't worry about what people voted for in the legislature. Let's just mail the ballots out to everybody. What could go wrong? Well, I want you to just think about Harris County. If that had happened just in Harris County, that's what, 6, 7, 8 million people getting ballots. We have no idea. You know the regular process for mailing ballots. You have to actually sign an application, send it in. They send you a ballot with an envelope. You fill out your ballot, you stick it in the envelope, you sign the envelope, and then you mail it back in. And guess what they do? They compare signatures. That's better than nothing. So what did they do in all these other states? As we fought this in Texas in 12 counties, and we ended up winning all 12, by the way. But I was worried about mail-in ballot fraud around the country. And so, sure enough, when election night happened, and we all saw the counting stop for the first time in our history, I told my staff, even though Trump was ahead in every state, every battleground state, I said, if they've stopped counting, they're just going to count the number of ballots they need, and they're going to figure out how many mail-in ballots. Because when you send those mail-in ballots in, and they've been mailed out to everybody, and when they say you can't prove fraud, they are correct. You cannot prove fraud because we don't know who signed those. We have no way to verify. And sure enough, 3 days later, for the first time in my life, we ended up with Joe Biden. And so I ended up with a third term to go fight Joe Biden. And that we did. On his very first day, Joe Biden announced to the world, I am not going to deport anybody. Now, how many of y'all would raise your hand and say that was the law of the United States? That was absolutely not the law. His job was to enforce the Constitution, to enforce the laws that had been passed. And why would you announce on day one that you're not going to deport anybody unless you wanted a bunch of people to come in? And he wanted the cartels to know that. And so we got busy. On day 3, we sued him. 3 days after he was in office, we sued him. And we got an injunction on day 6. And that led to 107 lawsuits over a period of 4 years. And by the way, just for good measure, we sued him on his last day, on the day that he transitioned out of power. So we kept busy. And so I was looking around and thought, well, is there another thing I should be doing in the AG's office? And I just didn't feel it. And I felt like 12 years was enough. It's a big job. We have 4,200 employees, 38,000 cases going at one time, 1.6 million child support cases. It was time for somebody else to step up and do that job. And I thought, am I going to just retire? And I looked around, and I feel like in general, our statewide leaders are some of the best in the country. And even though you might be disappointed in some of their views at any particular time, in general, relative to other states, we're pretty good. I don't know if there's a better state. I can't find one, except for one spot, the U.S. Senate. And I looked around, and I thought, here's a guy that sided with Joe Biden to pass the most restrictive gun, Second Amendment restrictions since I think I've been alive. And he forced me into a lawsuit with ATF, because then ATF expanded that even further. And then I had to sue ATF, and we won. But it was John Cornyn's bill that got us there. He sided with Joe Biden on the Afghan resettlement without vetting these people at all. He fought the border. I know he's running ads saying he's funded the border, but here's the truth. I've got 15 different clips of him criticizing the border wall. He talks about how he's pro-Trump. We all know that's false. He, in 2016, said that Donald Trump was an albatross around our necks. Guess who he's saying that about now? Me. In 2024, he said we should elect somebody different. Trump's time has passed, and insinuated that he was guilty of crimes, even though he had no proof. This is a guy that used to be on the Texas Supreme Court. He also, by the way, when he was on the Texas Supreme Court, many of you have heard of Robin Hood. Well, he wrote that opinion. It was a 5-4 majority opinion written by John Cornyn. And for that, they delivered him the AG's office and then the U.S. Senate. And so as I have traveled this state, I have asked in every group I've been in since April the 8th. I've been in almost every nook and cranny of Texas, and I've asked this one question. Can you name one great accomplishment of John Cornyn? And let's take not just the 24 years in the Senate. Let's go back to his AG days. Let's go back to his Texas Supreme Court days. Let's go back to when he was a district judge. He's been in office since I was in college, and I'm 63. Can you name one great accomplishment? And therein lies the problem. Over 4 decades of service, and what has he accomplished for Texas? And no one can answer that question, even his supporters. And I actually met with one of his biggest supporters 2 weeks before I got in the race, big funder. And I said, can you tell me? I told him I was running for U.S. Senate against John Cornyn. He said, well, we're going to spend $120 million to beat you. And I said, do it. And I said, why do you want me to stay in the AG's office? He said, well, you've done a great job. You're the best AG we've had. And I said, well, how come you funded every race against me? I said, let's move past that. Let me ask you one question. Why is John Cornyn running for a 5th term? No one's ever done that in Texas history. Not Sam Houston, not John Tower, not LBJ, not Phil Gramm. No one's ever done it. Why is John Cornyn running for a 5th term? And he looks at me and he goes, I don't know. We all told him not to run. 5 terms is too long for anybody to serve in the U.S. Senate. It's time for him to retire. And I said, so you agree with me? He shouldn't run. He goes, yes. But you're telling me not to run because he's your friend. He goes, yes. I said, well, guess what? That's not compelling for me, and that's not compelling to our voters. And so here I am, 10 months later, still fighting. And so this race, I have a really good chance of winning this thing. As you know, there are other people in the race. There are, I think, 7 people in the race total. So it's challenging to get to 50%, but if anybody can do it, we can. John Cornyn has spent over $70 million so far, and still spending, since mid-July. He's been spending millions of dollars every week to convince you that he's done these things that he hasn't, and that he's supported Trump 99% of the time. It's all false. None of it's true. And all I've done is I've had to go out and raise money at $3,500 max a pop. And so I didn't get $30 million from DC. His money is coming from the DC establishment. And that's how he can afford these commercials, and that's how they always try to convince us in Washington with their money that we should select their person. Well, I'm not their person, and I will never be their person. I'm going to stay here and fight for you all. And I think I've proven that. As a matter of fact, I've said this over and over as I've traveled. I said, look, take any 2-week period I've been in the AG's office, except for the 2 weeks of Christmas and 1 week of Thanksgiving, and I guarantee you, I have accomplished more in 2 weeks, any 2 weeks. Let John Cornyn pick the 2 weeks than he has over his entire 40-plus years in service. And so it seems sad to me that we put up with this. But I get it. It's really hard to run against an incumbent statewide when they spend $70 million. It'll be probably $80 by the time we're done, just March 3rd. It's really hard if you're in a state of 31 million. How do you take a guy like that on? Well, we're doing it, and I can tell you in every single poll that I've seen, we are up on John Cornyn, and we have been since the beginning. And on March 3rd, I guarantee you, we will be up on John Cornyn. Yes. So I want to encourage you, as we step into early voting, please encourage your friends, your family to get out and vote, not straight Republican. We all know that's not going to work. Have them bring friends. Only about 8 to 10% of the registered voters show up for primaries. And so you have a tremendous ability to help save Texas and help save this country. And that's why I'm running. I feel like we have so many issues that we need to deal with, from the deficit to China to better judges to actually representing Texas values on Second Amendment. And I'll tell you, just like I've done this in the AG's office, just like I did this in the Texas Senate, check my record from beginning to end, and it is consistently conservative on all of those issues. And when I go to DC, you're going to get somebody that actually takes action, that actually looks out for you, that's not just stuck in Washington, but actually cares about what you care about, because I am you. And so I'm here to deliver that, and I will not stop until March 3rd when we cross the finish line and we retire John Cornyn. So thank you all for being here, and I think I get to ask questions. Did people get to ask questions? Is that fair? Oh, photos. She said no questions but photos. How about this? You can take photos and you can ask me questions while you're here. Is that fair? Well, thank you all for coming, and please encourage your friends and family to go vote. God bless.